I mean, I do want your expertise on something because over the course of this year, a couple of different times, I've said to you off microphone, hey, the Lakers and the Warriors, that stuff's all done. The league has changed hands toward the young people, and the things that we've covered about the Warriors and the Lakers for the last 8 years, they're no longer so. The league has been taken away from them. And you have not been willing, because you respect champions so much, because you respect basketball veterans so much, because you respect that playoff basketball is different, you've never been willing to say to me that the Warriors and the Lakers are indeed done. Now we head toward the postseason. The Lakers and the Warriors are playing better. LeBron is saying we've got to be smart about the end of the season. I don't care about seeding. All that matters is being healthy. The league has a crisis as it relates to load management. The Clippers don't care what the season looks like. Is Kawhi going to be healthy in the playoffs is what matters. But I think most people listening to this, especially Heat fans, are expecting Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat to turn some magical thing on because they did it last year and did something that is damn near unprecedented in the sport. To ask for it to be recreated makes me feel like the Heat are less likely to be able to summon some turn it on in the playoffs than the Lakers and Warriors. I don't believe any of them are going to do it, but you respect playoff experience and the way the game changes more than I do. So help me get through that thicket of who I should believe in here, because I don't believe in any of them.
Right. So I always say that talent wins, right? But you can close that gap and maybe even overtake talent with experience. And an inexperienced, talented team ultimately will falter to a team that is more experienced, however, probably not as talented. So bearing that in mind and looking at the Western Conference standings, knowing that 2 out of the top 3 seeds are going to be teams that are fairly light on experience.
OKC and Minnesota, you doubt. The thing that I don't doubt is Denver.
Well,
Denver has, for 2 years, has been better than all of these teams we're talking about.
And they are. And so, you asked the question about, out of the Lakers and the Warriors and then the Heat, which do you expect or give the most kind of leeway to be the one that overcomes? And you kind of said, well, it's kind of felt like the Heat because the Heat did it last year. I think you could argue the Lakers did it last year too. If we look at it, they both lost to the same team. The Heat managed to get 1 game off of them. The Lakers did not. So in terms of like experiences, the Heat and the Lakers both started to play in, both went on runs, beating teams that were less experienced than them, and then got to a place where they had to play someone who was the best team with the best player, and both got annihilated in that regard. So I would say that, first of all, it's not that big of a gap between what the Lakers did and what the Heat did. And then second of all, I would say that the thing that the Heat don't have, that the Lakers and the Warriors both do have, is what we've experienced over the last, like I said, 6 to 8 weeks of watching Heat basketball, which is you guys execute. You play hard, you defend, you're smart, you're the best coach in the league, all that stuff. But at some point in NBA playoff basketball, or NBA basketball in general, you kind of just need someone who's like, F everything. I'm so talented, I can make this happen. I can will this game to happen. And the Warriors have Steph Curry, and the Lakers have LeBron James, and the Heat have Jimmy Butler. But Jimmy Butler, of those 3 guys, is the guy that is like, doesn't do it every single night, right? Or doesn't do it every time out. And what we've done is we've actually given him a ton of credit of saying it's because he doesn't choose to, right? It's amazing.
Last night would have been a good time for him to choose to.
Any other player in the league who has this kind of inconsistent pattern, we don't give them the benefit of the doubt. We say, oh, man, that guy's inconsistent. You can't count on him. Jimmy's the only one where we're like, well, it was a choice. He chose not to do it. He chose not to do it. And maybe it has been. And maybe it still continues to be. But the reality is, and this comes for everybody, elite players, when they start to fall off, they rarely fall off a cliff. What it looks like is he's great one night and he's not great the other night. And it's like, is it a choice? Was last night a choice by Jimmy Butler? Or is he starting to lose it?
Is he starting to roll down the hill, maybe?
Instead of starting to roll down the hill because, Jeremy brought this up during the break. He couldn't post up Kyle Lowry, and I don't think that was because he chose not to. Kyle Lowry literally turned to the Heat bench, flexed his arms several times, said, "I'm too strong. You can't do that to me." And then he proceeded to never try to post him up again.
Is this all because, like, Jimmy will then have, like, a 45-point game in the playoffs, and Heat fans will be like, see? We told you. Jimmy's trying tonight. But then he'll do that until he can't.
Exactly.
Like,
and again, like, I'm not saying unequivocally this is the beginning of the end of Jimmy Butler. I'm just saying, in general, when you see
if this is what it would look like.
Exactly. That, like, star players who are great one night and not great the next night, or don't step up the next night, it's not because they're choosing, I'm a chill tonight. It's usually because that's how the end starts to look. I'm hot tonight, I'm not hot the next night.
It's fair to ask these questions, considering the scoring output recently from Jimmy. If you look, like last night, they were plus 10 with him on the floor, right? And his defense was really solid, but his lack of aggressiveness in terms of scoring was surprising. And you've seen it all regular season long where he's not really searching for contact at the rim in the way that we've seen him do it in the playoffs. And so that's sort of the question that you have, right? Is like, is he saving his body for the postseason? We were asking these same questions last year, to be honest, in the final couple of weeks of the season as they were fighting for play-in position in a similar spot. So it's one of those, I think, for everybody, particularly Heat fans and the people who cover the Heat, it's like, we're going to have to see him not do it in the playoffs before deciding, hey, this is how this is going to go.
Last time I saw him in the playoffs, he was not doing it in the playoffs against Denver.
This is alarming because Amin has been out in front and spot on with his Jimmy takes throughout the years. Remember, before we had Jimmy, we were skeptical, and he was like, he's a dude.
Superstar.
And now before we're ready for him to be done, Amin's kind of telling us. So I'm a little scared here that Amin might be right.
I have a lot on what he just said, okay? Shaq said when he dubbed himself the Big Aristotle and made the jump from underachiever to champion and MVP. He called himself the Big Aristotle because he said, you are what you consistently do, and that is exactly how a superstar ages, where you can't even tell watching. It's the same body, and you can convince yourself, well, fouls hurt, and I wouldn't want to try and get 16 of them during an NBA regular season game when LeBron is telling you, I don't care about seeding, I care about health. So they are near the rim is where it hurts to play basketball the most. It's hardest to get stuff there. And look, man, Embiid has gotten very good at falling down, and his body is breaking apart because it's harder to be stronger than all of those people. But one of the things that Amin is saying that makes me laugh at the idea that you are trusting a person because very often he puts 45-point games up in the playoffs that you weren't expecting. You are trusting a person who people in that league say, it was Josh Hart who said Jimmy goes on these side crusades that include him being on a horse. I've never seen this before in Miami in the place where it is that he is, which is Jimmy Butler physically on a horse in Miami traffic. This is not Davey. He's in a cowboy hat. He's a country music fan who fancies himself a bit of a cowboy, and I've seen him around town on a motorized bike. He enjoys the outdoors here. He enjoys his fame. He enjoys being seen. But I thought to myself, this has to be a commercial for something, right? He's not going to work on a horse through Miami traffic, right? This isn't just Jimmy hanging around on the side with one of his side crusades. What is this?
I mean, it's Jimmy being Jimmy. Like that's kind of how he behaves.
I was going to say, are we sure it's Jimmy? But who
That's also
else
a good
could
question.
get away with doing this? Like, only someone like Jimmy could get away with doing this. Who else could it be?
I don't know. I saw a video the other day that was going viral of some woman who brought a bed into like the intersection in Brickell and was like taking pictures on it in the middle of traffic. And I was like, what's going on here?
It was early that day,
No,
though.
I'm going to tell you something. Miami leads the league in like
that you'll see in the street.
People doing for social.
For clout.
For clicks, yeah.
I mean, I will ask the question, when it comes to Jimmy and the Heat, if he just hits that three at the end of the game last night, right?
Yeah.
He had a decent look.
Mm-hmm.
He hits that 3 at the end of the game. The Heat win. They basically close out the Sixers from being able to catch them. Now, obviously, they're in a play-in situation where they're probably going to end up in the play-in.
Right.
He hits that 3. He leads the team in scoring. They beat the 76ers in what was a crazy game that they had no business in being in.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting healthy at the right time. Tyler Hero travels with the team. Are we even having this conversation? And it's not to say that we shouldn't, but is one shot going to sort of determine how we feel?
So the positivity would have been overwhelming because the team has been playing better recently.
Their defense, and this is what will carry them, their defense the last couple of months has been either best in the league or close to best in the
They're
league.
They're number 4 in the league in defensive rating, even after being horrendous to start the year.
They've been stellar defensively. And if he hits that shot, then people just say, well, he made it when it counts. But I got to shout out Ethan Skolnick on this one because he told me, look at Jimmy's numbers against the top 10 defenses in the league.
Yeah.
He's struggled. He has struggled against tough defenses.
That's right.
And again, I don't think that's a choice.
Is that most guys, though? Like, don't most guys eat against bad and do...
Yeah, absolutely. I always say any season numbers, whether it's a team or an individual, is built on the corpses of bad playing Detroit and Washington and teams like that.
The Blazers.
And the Blazers, right? But also, this is the guy that is anointed as when it matters, when it counts, or when that's your brand. But when it matters and when it counts, you've struggled consistently all year long. And I don't think that's been the case for him in years past. Here's my thing. I don't think anybody is above questioning. I'm not here to tell you, Chris, oh, Jimmy's done. This is it. This is how it ends, right? I'm just saying, I don't know if this is a choice. That's what I'm asking that question. Now, he may come when the playoffs start and game one has a crazy game one like he did against Milwaukee and they go on a great run. Sure. But that doesn't change the fact that, you can't do it every night, can you?
Heat, Bucks, first round.
Oh, my God.
And the Bucks.
What if it's the same exact route?
It might be. It might very well be Bucks, Knicks, Celtics. See you there.
No shot we do it again.
Okay, get the tape ready.
That's what we said last year.
Yep.
Who's the number 1 pick this year?
Christ.
To Amin's point, incidentally, on the TV screen right now is Ime Udoka saying of his Houston Rockets, who were playing at home last night against the Warriors, who finished them. Ime Udoka called his players soft and not ready and deer in headlights, and we weren't ready for the moment.
Heat Rockets tonight.
The Rockets have been very good for a while, and Golden State dragged them last night in their own building, when a lot of people were saying, oh, you don't want to see the Rockets in the playoffs. Look at hot at the right time, in keeping what it is that Amin is saying, that things are about to change. And one of the things that will change is that Eric Spoelstra will have 7 games against a single team to figure out a number of different things about that single team.
Well, he's got to get out of the play-in first.
Which they barely did last year, which a lot of people forget.
Yep.
Because a lot of people forget that with 4 minutes left in what would have ended their season, they were down at home against a bad Bulls team before then beating Giannis. I just don't think they can do that again. I don't think they have the wherewithal to do all of that, even though I trust this team. I trust its management. I just think that the top end of what's happening in basketball is too good for the bottom end of these play-in games this year.
The Bucks are also worse than they were last year.
The Bucks are. That is correct.
But so are the Heat.
No, but I mean, if we're going to talk about where the Heat are and where they stand in comparison to last season, the Celtics are the only runaway dominant team in the East. If you look at the rest of the East, the Bucks are struggling. The Cavs are struggling. The Knicks
are struggling.
The Magic. It's like no matter who you end up getting in that first round, you have a puncher's chance.
I think it's disgusting that we've talked about the NBA for this long when this is one of the best college basketball weekends of the year. And last night I watched our buddy Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the NIT Championship game.
It was so good. The end of that game was so good.
Dan, it was devastating. Indiana State lost to Seton Hall, and the Seton Hall coach after the game literally went up to our buddy Robbie, lifted his chin up and said, hey, keep your chin up. Literally lifted his chin up.
All chins?
Come on. Come on.
He's
don't,
our friend.
Don't fat shame
What?
Avila.
Only fat shame.
His nickname is
me.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You think I'm fat shaming him?
I don't think that's a fat thing.
I think that's
it's
a white
it's
thing.
a white.
I
He's
don't
a big
think it's
white.
because he likes heavy cream in his coffee.
Although he probably does.
Yikes.
Anywho, it was electric. Unfortunately, Indiana State, my Sycamores, they lost, which was a bummer. But tonight we have a big matchup. Lucy's in Cleveland right now.
Yes.
For the Final Four.
Yes.
She had COVID last week.
She's
Tony.
back, Jack.
She wasn't able to go
had
to
it this
Albany.
week.
Yeah, well,
Tony,
it's
2024,
spans
man.
a week. Yeah, like
get
she
it?
was sick last week,
Yeah.
and now she's feeling better. I
Finish her
assume.
rehab.
She has been testing. She has been testing, and I trust her that she is now testing negative. Yes, people still test.
Oh,
Tony.
sorry, you heard that?
Yes, COVID still sucks. I had it.
It exists.
Lucy
Somewhat
actually
recently.
early in the week told us about it.
I don't recommend COVID. It's still got hands in 2024.
Exactly. So Lucy will be in Cleveland. The Iowa UConn game is the late game, 9 o'clock. So that means it's
prime
going to tip
time.
off at like 9:30.
Yeah.
Because
Prime time.
the
Put
networks.
the kids to bed.
The
Yep.
networks,
'Cause
they
it's
hate
bedtime.
telling us what time a game will actually start.
No.
And the South Carolina NC State game's right before it. So
Well, I'm
there's
gonna say-
probably going to be a little buffer.
I'm gonna say this. I said this yesterday before the show, and I got frowns and I got called a Jeremy Joker for saying this but it's not a joke. It's not a joke. If UConn beats Iowa, and Paige Beckers has a big game, she needs to go in that post game and say, from now on, call me Paige Betters, because I'm better than her.
Did you make that joke yesterday?
I didn't make that.
He
joke.
made
I
it.
know, it's
He made
such
it
a
off
bad
air,
joke.
and
Why
we
would you say
Not
that?
a
kept
joke.
doing it. He's
It's
been
not a
doing
joke.
it. He's
It's not a
We all
joke.
told you it wasn't funny.
I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to. What is this? You can play
You're
that.
not trying to be funny.
I'm not trying to tell you a joke. I'm actually serious. I think Paige Beckers ought to call herself Paige Betters if she
That's
wins, obviously.
hilarious.
I think that's great,
because
Amin.
Paige, see,
Damn.
I don't like your allies. Paige Beckers is like every time she is asked any question about like herself or sports or anything, like she always has the smartest answer. Like she's probably the last player that I'd ever be like, yeah, she's the one who's gonna say I'm Paige Betters.
That's
now.
why.
Like she's literally
You gotta
asked
zag.
in the Final Four press conference, like something about like next year, like are you going to be the Caitlin Clark? Are you going to be the focal point of women's basketball? And she was like, I hope not, because there's like a lot of good players, and I hope we can spread our attention across all of the great players in women's basketball. And everyone was like, this girl gets it.
This is what she said. I don't need.
You gotta
to
want
be,
the attention if you're her.
I said I don't need to be Caitlin Clark because I'm Paige Betters.
Again, you're doing that.
Betters. I'm better than her.
Yeah, we got it.
Because Paige Buckets is dumb. Her name isn't Paige Bookers. Her name's Paige Beckers. So that's why better and Beckers.
That's good analysis. I'm really excited. I'm really excited for the game. UConn has like no healthy players, and if they get in foul trouble, it could get ugly. And actually, the way that I've been gauging my bracket this year is like based off of Notre Dame games this year, because Notre Dame was a Sweet 16 team. They're very good. They have one of the best players in the country in Hannah Hidalgo, ACC Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year. And Notre Dame has played 3 of the 4 teams in this Final Four, and they beat UConn at UConn.
Okay, Mike.
on alumni
relax,
night.
Mike. Okay, this is the
The
Mike
difference
line.
between me and Mike is that Notre Dame is actually a pretty good measuring stick because they're very good at basketball. They're very close to being in the Elite Eight.
Blue Bloods?
If it weren't for Hannah Hidalgo's nose ring, that's a whole other story. We don't have to get into that. But anyways, they beat NC State in the ACC championship game, but they lost them early in the season. NC State held them to like 43 points. But they played South Carolina all the way back at the beginning of the season, if you remember, in Paris, and South Carolina beat them by like 30 points. So, I mean, it was way back. That was a long time ago. It was like 6 months ago. But I've got South Carolina still. But UConn, I'm like, Notre Dame beat them at home. I don't know.
Well,
Yep.
I mean, UConn. Sorry, Dan. UConn, like it was shaky for them.
Because of the injuries.
Yeah.
Because, like, if they, like, the Notre Dame game at UConn, they got in foul trouble, and Notre Dame had some really good matchups in the third and fourth quarter because of it, and they were able to dominate basically in the third quarter and win the game. And if something like that happens tonight, and it almost happened against USC earlier this week, they had a couple players with 4 fouls. It's dicey because they've had like the worst injury luck, I think, of almost any team you can imagine. So many players with season-ending injuries this year that they're playing with like 7 players basically every night, and that it's tough.
Will Gino learn from Kim Mulkey's sins?
Let me analyze this for a second
Why?
because
We're
yesterday
we're doing college basketball.
I know I want to talk about college basketball, but I also want to talk about Jessica's frustration from yesterday, where she is saying that some of the college basketball coverage of women's basketball is dumb and hot takey, and she is
Paige
right.
Betters.
Well, this is what I was just going to say. She's breaking down a pretty fun weekend, and your response, the guy who came in here yesterday and said Kim Mulkey is terrible, doesn't know what she's doing, clearly a college coach. I could fix everything there in a day. She's just someone who
say-
yells people.
She hasn't won anything.
She yells at people to make them better as opposed to scheming. You fixed everything about the game after watching it for a half hour. I just
Well, I
really
watched
am
it for 2
enjoying
hours,
that
Dan.
her analysis is that this analysis stinks, and your rebuttal a day later with time to think about it is, what if I made Paige Becker's Paige better?
Well,
Let me-
I'm
no,
gonna
hold on. No, I'm going to defend you for a second because I think something got a little misconstrued yesterday, which happens when like the social team, I'm not blaming them, but they put out like a 40-second clip and there's a little bit of context missing. I don't mind like dumb hot take like who's the GOAT? Is Caitlin Clark the GOAT? That is like not what I was talking about. I was talking about like
Lobo.
the overt racism and sexism in a lot of the coverage that I've seen on mainstream shows. I'm not talking about like, oh, is Cheryl Miller the GOAT? Is Caitlin Clark? That's fine. Like that is what we do with men's sports. And I feel like we got kind of caught up in a couple different conversations happening at once.
I
And
appreciate your lukewarm support of me.
Paige Betters is fine. I'm not upset about it. It's a bad joke. That's all I'm
It's
saying.
not a joke. Why does everyone keep calling it a bad joke? I'm being
You're
serious.
trying to do like wordplay and it's just not.
I tell
it's
you
bad
what,
wordplay.
I bet you if the New York Post will disagree, that back page will say Paige Betters tomorrow night or tomorrow morning. But then,
And everyone's always like, the New York Post is the funniest
That's the barometer.
newspaper on
look,
earth.
you come up with some good-ass puns and get on the back of the New York Post, and then you talk to me.
First
That's
take.
the job that I was always meant to do. Is I should just be the guy who writes the back page of the New York Post.
It's a great. You walk around the city, you see people on the subway holding up, you're like, that's
First
my
Take
work.
is great at it in the TV
the,
game.
The lower third, yep, they do a good job. But then I have to stick up for myself even more than Jessica's lukewarm defense.
That was a hot pocket straight out of the oven.
On
Hot defense. By the way.
Tuesday, the day after the game, I broke down for the first half of the first segment of the show basketball analysis about how they were guarding.
They were going
Caitlin
under.
Clark.
You can't
They're
go
going under.
No
and
hedging.
and no hedging and no blitzing.
No blitzing.
and no switching personnel and all that stuff. Do not tell me that my analysis
I
yesterday was
didn't.
that. No, I'm talking to
Oh,
Dan.
okay.
Do not
Dan,
te-
it's your fault.
Do not tell me
First
that
of
my
all.
analysis was
It's always
that
your
Kim
fault.
Mulkey just yells. That wasn't my analysis. My analysis was actually very X's and O's
Astute
rooted.
defensive analysis for him.
Thank you.
My counter to your analysis, though, how do you defend Caitlin Clark? Like, we will see in the next two games.
We talked about it.
Okay,
If Gino and Don Staley, and especially Don Staley, who's like one of the best coaches in women's basketball history and like an all-star defender, if she can't figure it out, then like maybe when you hit 9 threes from 30 feet out, it's just hard to defend that.
Amin is now going to show us with his
Yep.
broken back,
Well,
45-year-old body.
It's
He's
not
going
my broken back. Like if I say it like this, you go like, you're not talking to the microphone. So,
Well,
so I have to
you've
bend
gotten
over
up.
to do this.
You've gotten up to show how to defend
I'm gonna
Caitlin
go in there and
Clark.
help him.
Yes, please
Come here,
blitz
come
her.
here.
Go
These
ahead.
on the field things always crush.
All right,
This is
go ahead.
helpful for
This is
sure.
great. So now Tony and Amin are both going to defend
Elite
Caitlin,
athletes like Caitlin
Clark 30 feet from the basket.
Okay, all right. First of all, let's not be dumbasses. I'm not saying, oh, I could guard Caitlin Clark.
Let's
I'm
not
saying-
be dumbasses.
But
It's such a great place
understand,
to start.
understand that me and Tony are proxies for the actual athletes playing, right? This is how they were guarding. So that's the screen right there, right? Right?
Tony does not think he's a proxy, by the way.
Tony
thinks
for
he
sure
can guard
thinks he
Caitlin
could guard Clayton Clark.
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 Tony will be
Made
the
her
big
Clayton.
who is guarding the screener. Imagine Caitlin Clark zooming past the screen right here. I'm trying to guard her. This is what Iowa did.
Can you just cut off his microphone? Like, I mean,
You know
I
what?
don't want
All
to
of this
do
is to
this.
say-
No, you know what? No, cut
Notre Dame
my
versus
microphone
Iowa
off.
would
No,
have been
Dan
a
Le
great
Batard.
matchup
No, hold on,
because
hold on, hold on, hold on,
Anna Hidalgo is
hold on,
the
hold on.
best
Give me
defender
a
in
second.
college
Look,
basketball. She's
Jesus
averaging
Christ.
5 steals a
How
game.
are we making
she
this
is
about
so
Notre
quick
Dame?
and so fast.
Wait,
and she's just snatched that ball. She just snatched
Dan
it.
demands.
But the NCAA doesn't want you to see that. They don't
Dan
want you to have
demands
the
that we
correct
have
three-point
smarter
line. They don't
analysis.
want you to wear
I try to
jewelry.
give him smarter analysis. He's like, cut his microphone off. Oh, what is he doing? Oh, he's standing up and trying to show us
sometimes salt
actual
and vinegar
basketball.
chips really affect your
You
fingers,
guys
okay?
are so ridiculous.
I could tell
All
this
you
is
want
straight.
is a clown show. You don't want analysis. You don't want education. You guys want us to put on red clown noses and big colorful wigs and say, do. That's what I'll do for you guys. And don't anybody ever talk to me about how we're not analyzing this
And
smart
you better
enough.
watch out
We don't
for
know how
next
to
year
cover
when
this
Olivia
game. game?
Miles is
Oh,
back.
why does anyone know how to cover the game?
No one's doing this better than us.